The rain was soft but persistent, falling over the Tuscan hills like a silk veil soaked in sorrow. Cortona's winding roads had always been a picture of serenity, until tonight. Herr Schatten stood at the iron gates of Villa Bianchi, his coat dripping, the old gravel path stretching into the shadows of olive trees and silence. In his gloved hand was the envelope that had shattered his routine. No return address, no words, just a single Latin word drawn in blood across parchment. Veritas. He'd seen things written in blood before, but never a single word that said so much by saying nothing at all. As the gates creaked open, the old house revealed itself, cold, proud, watching. The stone walls carried whispers of another century. From the second floor, a curtain moved, too slowly for the wind. He had been invited by no one, and yet someone clearly wanted him here. The butler, pale and visibly unsettled, opened the heavy front door. "Signor Schatten, we didn't expect visitors." Herr Schatten removed his hat. "You didn't, but the dead did." He stepped inside. The investigation had already begun. The foyer of Villa Bianchi was a cathedral of shadows. Tall arched windows allowed moonlight to spill in thin silver lines. Over marble floors, antique portraits stared down from cracked frames, faces long dead, yet seemingly alert to the intrusion. A musty scent of dried herbs, old leather, and beeswax polish hung in the air. The silence was not just absence of sound, it was intended. Herr Schatten's steps echoed as he moved slowly through the corridor, his eyes scanning every crevice, every detail. The butler followed behind like a ghost, speaking only when Schatten paused before a massive oil painting near the staircase. "That's Signor Aurelio in his younger days," the butler murmured, "painted by a Sicilian artist he admired." Schatten didn't respond. He was studying the crack on the lower right corner, where something had once been nailed and removed. "Where's the room where the body was found?" he asked finally. "Upstairs, second door on the left." As they ascended the grand staircase, a distant grandfather clock struck once, a sound that didn't echo, but collapsed into the air like a warning. At the landing, voices emerged from the study to the right, the family clearly, whispering, not grieving. He glanced sideways. How many live here? His two sons, Dario and Luca, his niece, Isabella, and the housekeeper. That's all that's left. Schatten gave a slow nod. Then let's see what secrets they're trying to protect. He stepped toward the left hallway, where the dead man's room awaited, and the truth, buried in dust and silence, began to stir. The door to the master bedroom opened with a reluctant groan. Herr Schatten stepped into the darkened space, the butler remaining just outside. He didn't need the light to know where to look. He followed the smell, not of blood, of absence. The room was meticulously arranged, too meticulously. The books on the nightstand aligned with military precision, a decanter of red wine on the dresser untouched, a single glass rinsed left drying near the wash basin. And on the bed, perfectly made, lay the outline of a man who had not gone gently. The sheets bore no wrinkles, no struggle, but the pillow was missing. In its place, a faint impression, as if someone had kneeled there, watching. Herr Schatten knelt beside the bed and examined the floor. The grain of the wood had been disturbed, a scuff, faint but fresh. Then he saw it. Under the wardrobe, something had been hastily kicked beneath it. With care, he reached under and retrieved a folded slip of paper, yellowed but fresh. Unfolding it slowly, his eyes narrowed. It wasn't a suicide note. It wasn't a confession. It was a quote, cut from a book, glued with precision. Truth is the daughter of time, not authority. No fingerprints, no handwriting. Herr Schatten stood up slowly. The killer hadn't just taken a life, they'd left a thesis. The study smelled of old tobacco, walnut shells, and inherited tension. Herr Schatten entered slowly, his presence met by a trio of cold eyes and colder silences. The fire crackled weakly in the hearth. 3 figures sat, scattered around the room like reluctant participants in a forgotten play. Dario Bianchi sat closest to the fire, mid-40s, stiff-tailored, fingers laced, like a man used to command, but no longer obeyed. Across from him, Luca, younger, nervy, fiddling with a cigarette he never lit. And between them, Isabella, calm as winter glass. Her eyes didn't blink when she looked at Schatten. "Which of you found the body?" he asked, his voice flat. "I did," Luca said quickly. "I went to check on him in the morning, around 9. "Alone?" Luca hesitated. "Yes." Dario snorted. "He means he waited until the maid screamed." "Interesting," Schatten replied, unfazed. "And where were you, Mr. Dario?" "Downstairs, reading. I heard the noise but assumed it was the coffee machine dying again." Schatten walked to the bookshelf, his fingers trailing across a line of Greek philosophy. Dust patterns told him more than the words. "Your father changed his will the day he died. Did you all know?" They stiffened. Only Isabella nodded. "He told me, but not what he changed." The fire cracked again, louder this time. "And what did he say exactly?" Schatten asked. Isabella's answer came without emotion. He said, "People inherit more than wealth. They inherit silence." Schatten turned to her slowly. "And what have you inherited, Miss Bianchi?" She met his gaze without flinching, a talent for watching people lie. For the first time that evening, Herr Schatten smiled. The kitchen was a world apart, warm, cluttered, alive in a way the rest of the house wasn't. Herr Schatten sat across from the housekeeper, Teresa, a woman in her late 60s with weathered hands and eyes that had stopped being surprised long ago. She didn't offer coffee, only a stare and a folded rag in her lap she kept twisting. "You worked for Signor Bianchi for how long?" he asked. 22 years, she replied, "and for his father before that." "That's a lifetime." She nodded. "Too long to pretend I didn't see things." Schatten leaned forward slightly. "Like what?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked past him, toward the hallway, where no one was, but where the house always seemed to be listening. "There was always tension," she said finally. "But something changed this past month. He became afraid." "Of who? Not who. What?" Schatten frowned. "Explain." She stood slowly, walked to a drawer, and pulled out a worn, leather-bound notebook. "He asked me to hide this the day before he died, told me not to trust anyone, not even the family." She slid it across the table. Schatten opened it carefully. No diary entries, only one page written. "If truth is death, let it come clean." No signature, no explanation. He looked up. "Why didn't you show this to the police?" She didn't blink. "Because they would have buried it, just like they buried his brother." A pause, the kind that made silence feel like thunder. Schatten closed the notebook. This wasn't about a will anymore. It was about what came before. The archive room was hidden behind a sliding bookshelf, known only to those who had reason to search the past. Herr Schatten stepped into the dim space, lit only by a flickering wall sconce. Dust floated in the air like suspended time. Boxes, faded labels, leather-bound folders. Nothing had been touched in years, or perhaps touched very carefully. He pulled a drawer labeled Familia, 1998. Inside, a single police report, an obituary, and a photograph. The man in the picture was unmistakably a Bianchi. Same jawline, same eyes as Dario. But this man was Cesare Bianchi, Aurelio's brother, declared dead in a boating accident 24 years ago. Body never recovered. The police report was thin, 2 pages. No witness statements, no autopsy, no follow-up. Herr Schatten's eyes narrowed. At the bottom of the second page, a handwritten note. Request to close case. Signed by Aurelio Bianchi, June 19, 1998. He set the report aside and turned to the obituary. It was clipped from a local newspaper and highlighted in pencil with 3 words: beloved brother, trusted partner. But next to them, scribbled in faint ink, he was neither. Schatten slowly placed everything back into the drawer and closed it. He no longer believed the death of Aurelio was about inheritance. It was about reckoning. He turned toward the door, only to find it half closed. Someone had been watching, but they were gone now. Only the scent of old smoke remained. The garden was cloaked in damp fog, the scent of crushed rosemary and dying roses thick in the air. Isabella stood beneath a pavilion arch, arms crossed, staring at a marble statue half consumed by ivy. Herr Schatten approached in silence. She didn't turn. "You found the archive," she said. "I did. So now you know about Cesare. I know there's a man who died and a family that forgot too quickly." She finally faced him. "No one forgot. They were told to remember selectively." "By whom?" She looked toward the manor's dark windows. "My uncle was generous and dangerous. He believed truth was a luxury. Cesare tried to change that. And he died." Isabella took a breath. "He drowned in lies. Aurelio just helped him sink." A gust of wind passed through the roses. A few petals broke loose, drifting like red confessions onto the gravel. Schatten's voice was low, and now someone wants the truth dug up. Isabella nodded, and buried again, but deeper. The air in the servants' hallway was colder than the rest of the house. Narrow and low-ceilinged, the corridor ran behind the formal rooms like a forgotten artery. Herr Schatten moved slowly, the beam of his flashlight dancing over peeling paint and rusted sconces. The silence here wasn't peaceful. It was compressed, like it had been sealed shut for decades. Then he heard it. A breath. Not his. Faint, shallow, disappearing too quickly to chase. He followed the sound to a panel behind an old wardrobe. The wood was warped, edges chipped by time. He pressed gently. Nothing. Then harder. It clicked. The panel opened inward, revealing a cramped tunnel descending into darkness. Steps curved down in a spiral, carved into the foundation stone. The scent changed, earthy, damp, and old. At the bottom, a single door, heavy and iron-banded, no lock, just a handle slick with condensation. He didn't open it. Not yet. He looked up. Someone had sealed this place for a reason, and someone else had recently broken that seal. The iron door groaned open, exhaling a breath of stale air and cold stone. Herr Schatten stepped inside without hesitation. The room was small, circular, and lined with rough brick. A single bare bulb dangled from a frayed wire above, flickering as if protesting its own existence. Shadows stretched long across the floor. Against the far wall stood a table, dusty but not untouched. On it, an oil lantern, half full, a ceramic bowl with scorched edges, and beneath the bowl, charred paper fragments. Schatten sifted through the ash with tweezers from his coat. Most were too far gone to read, but one sliver remained intact, caught in a fold of ceramic. It was part of a ledger. Names, dates, a column labeled payments, and at the bottom, half-burned, Cesare Bianchi, final installment. Schatten didn't move. This room wasn't just hidden. It had been used, recently. He turned toward the door, but it had begun to close, slowly, on its own. And above him, the light bulb flickered again. But this time, it went out. The staircase groaned beneath his steps as Herr Schatten emerged from the underground vault. The air above felt heavier now, like the house had noticed his descent and resented it. Corridors once familiar were now foreign, too quiet, too clean. A vase had been moved, a light left on, footsteps had passed while he was below. But whose? He reached the second-floor hallway and paused. The door to Aurelio's study was ajar. It had been locked earlier. Inside, the fireplace glowed faintly, though no one was near. On the desk, papers once stacked were now spread out. At the center, Aurelio's last will and testament, or what remained of it. The signature page had been torn. Schatten stepped closer. The scent of burning lingered, but the pages were cold. A movement, a reflection in the glass cabinet. He turned fast. No one. Only his own face staring back, but distorted, blurred by dust and the faintest trace of a handprint. Someone had watched him again, and this time they'd left a mark. The cabinet was locked, but the key was obvious, taped beneath the drawer, hidden like a child's secret. Herr Schatten turned it slowly. The lock clicked with a tired sigh. Inside, a leather file folder labeled Medical Final. He placed the documents on the table under the dim desk lamp. The coroner's report was thin, too clinical. Cause of death, cardiac arrest, no signs of trauma. Clean, sterile, convenient. But Schatten knew how silence could be crafted. He flipped to the attached photo sheet. Black and white images of Aurelio's body, hands folded too neatly. No discoloration. But then he spotted it. A faint bruise behind the right ear, partially obscured, not noted in the report. He scanned the margins of the document. There, almost invisible, pencil indentations, erased but not gone. Cranial impact. Contusion suggests pre-death trauma. Someone had removed the truth, but not completely. He leaned back. The official story had been cleaned, but the body, like the house, remembered more than it was allowed to say. The northern tower had long been walled off, at least that was what the architectural plans claimed. Yet as Herr Schatten traced the faded outline of the corridor with his gloved hand, he noticed fresh plaster, rushed, uneven, like a cover-up performed in panic. With a firm push, the wooden panel cracked open. Behind it, a spiral staircase climbed into darkness. At the top, a single door stood half open. Dust clung to every surface, but the air didn't feel abandoned. It felt paused. The room beyond was modest. A narrow bed, a bookshelf lined with outdated encyclopedias, a small writing desk, its surface cluttered with dried ink pots, torn paper, and a cracked photograph frame. Schatten approached the photo. The glass was shattered, but the image beneath was clear enough. Cesare Bianchi smiling beside a younger Isabella. The edges of the frame were burned, as if someone had tried to destroy it, but changed their mind halfway. On the desk sat a journal, thin but heavy with meaning. The last written page was dated June 18th, 1998, the day before Cesare drowned. He knows, Aurelio knows everything. He thinks silence is safety, but truth has a sound, and soon someone will hear it. Schatten stared out the tower window. Below, the garden was quiet, but in the glass reflection, behind him, a shadow moved. He turned quickly. The door had closed. This room didn't just belong to someone, it still remembered them. The cemetery lay on the outskirts of Cortona, where the road curved away from the town and into the hills. No wind, no birds, just the crunch of gravel under Schatten's shoes. He carried only a flashlight and a folded document from the villa's archive, the original burial notice for Cesare Bianchi. Row after row of crumbling headstones. Lantern light flickered against moss-covered names. And then he found it, a fresh grave. Not newly dug, but maintained, flowers recently wilted, soil turned. The headstone was clean, engraved simply, Cesare Bianchi, 1960 to 1998. La verità tace, ma olmes. Truth is silent but never dies. Herr Schatten knelt, brushing aside fallen petals. Something was off. The dates matched, the name matched, but the inscription, it wasn't from any obituary or church record. It was personal, chosen by someone who remembered him differently. He scanned the area. In the distance, a woman stood beside an old cypress tree. Black coat, umbrella closed, watching him, not moving. When he turned to approach, she was gone. He examined the base of the grave. Dirt had been disturbed, not dug, but accessed. A small metal tag jutted from the soil like a forgotten drawer pull. He didn't open it. Not yet. Some things waited decades to be found. Another hour wouldn't change that. The villa greeted his return like a beast holding its breath. Herr Schatten stepped inside, coat damp from the cemetery fog. The air had changed, warmer somehow, breathing. Floorboards creaked before he moved. The chandelier above the foyer swayed, though no draught touched it. He made his way to the main study. The fire was out, but the embers glowed unnaturally bright. Papers that had once been scattered were now ordered. The torn will, gone. But something new waited on the desk. A photograph, unlabeled, unframed, old. 3 boys by a lake. One clearly Aurelio, one Cesare, the third unfamiliar, smiling, holding a slingshot, a deep scar on his neck. Behind the photo, a single handwritten line. He never drowned, he was drowned. Schatten stared at the words. Not a confession, a correction. A gust of wind blew open the study's window. The curtain rose like a breath, and in that moment, something cold passed through him. Not fear, but memory, not his. He turned slowly toward the hallway mirror. No reflection, not at first. Then, in the corner, briefly, a face not his own, pale, watching, gone. The house wasn't just hiding the past, it had become a part of it. The long dining table had never been set for breakfast this early. Yet all 4 members of the household were seated, as if summoned by something older than habit. Dario, arms crossed. Luca shaking. Isabella composed. Teresa silent. Herr Schatten stood at the head of the table, gloved hands resting on a folder thick with truth. "I'm not here to ask questions anymore," he said. "I'm here to speak the names no one else will." He opened the folder. Photographs, letters, Cesare's journal, the altered coroner's report, and finally the copy of Aurelio's torn will, restored. "The man you buried," he said, "was not just your uncle. He was your historian, your jailer, your weapon." He turned to Dario. "You altered the report." Dario flinched. "I protected the family." "No," Schatten replied. "You protected the version of it he built." To Luca, "You watched, you never acted." To Teresa, "You obeyed until the very end." Then his eyes met Isabella's. "And you?" She interrupted, calm. "I waited." Silence. Herr Schatten walked to the fireplace and threw the folder into the flames. One by one the pages curled and blackened. Truth, once buried, does not always belong to the world. He turned back. "The law cannot fix this, but silence can no longer keep it." He placed a single object on the table, the brass drawer pull from the cemetery. It was his coffin. Hidden under soil but empty inside, he never left this place. Neither did what happened to him. No one spoke. The fire whispered everything. Herr Schatten retrieved his coat. Dawn bled through the curtains, staining the floor in pale gold. As he opened the front door, he paused. Behind him, footsteps echoed, not from shoes, but from memory, from voices that once screamed and were never heard. He did not look back.